Crime Book Club. I am here with Ruth Kelly, who has kept me gripped with The Villa. Oh my word, what a book this is. Show us the cover, Ruth, and tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, here is the cover. Ooh. And
It's so enticing, isn't it? It really draws you in, sets
I
the
love
scene.
the blue. The blue is absolutely stunning.
Gorgeous.
It's about it's a reality game show set on a private island in Spain with 10 contestants. The story is told in 3 voices, through the journalist Laura, who goes in undercover, through the viewers who are voting as the show goes on, and through the voice of Michelle, who's the producer of the show. And the book begins with Michelle's voice almost at the end of the show, really, without giving too much away, although it's given away in the first chapter. So
some things are told straight away, and some things we are kind of trying to figure it out as we go along through the conversations that people are having, through seeing the action as it happens. You know, you're really going through people's eyes in different ways, and it keeps it really it keeps you right there, doesn't it? Really pinned in that moment.
Well, that was the. I mean, I'm glad you say that. That's what I was hoping for.
That's what happened.
I wanted it to be really fast paced. I wanted it to mimic the speed that things turn over in reality TV shows, and you're sort of on the edge of your seat and can't wait until the next episode coming up. That's what I wanted it to be like, breathless, like what's going to happen next?
And there's such short chapters that you are literally it's one of the fastest I've read a book in a while.
Really?
You really kept that pace all the way through. And by changing it from conversations with Michelle and Sanchez, who's the police officer, and you're going into the villa and you're seeing all of the conversations between the contestants, and then you've got, you know, the producer or the voice cutting in at different moments. So that's kind of put on hold while you deal with the next thing before you go back to whatever it was they've been cut off from. There's so many different aspects. Your head must have been spinning trying to keep up with this while you wrote it.
I did find it quite tricky, and then I found a technique to overcome it. So I probably wrote it back to back, the chapters, not taking them apart. But then when I edited it and went over and over again, I cut and paste. So I took the producer's chapters, Michelle's chapters, and I cut and pasted them, and I put them all on one document. And then I made it was much easier to do it, because then I could just see the continuation of the storyline. In fact, I almost changed the storyline by looking at it that way, because of that it was much easier to see when you lay it out like that. And I think that was a great technique that I learned. And if I was going to do many voices, I would probably do that again, because it's a way for me to keep the tone consistent. Because if you're jumping from the viewers to Michelle to Laura the journalist, and you're writing, it's quite hard to change voices easily, I think.
Yeah, I think you can see all the work you've put into that, though, to keeping their identities individual. Because you could open it and you could see which one of them was talking. You could figure it out, you know, just from seeing snippets of the conversation or their point of view. You've definitely kept them really distinctive.
Good.
Which is not an easy thing, because, you know, you've got several men, several women. So you are looking at them as individuals, how they work as a group, how they work when the group is mixed up in various ways, which we won't really talk about because I don't want to give anything away. But they are dropped into lots and lots of different situations, but you'd still know who you were reading if you just opened it up. You know, if you literally dropped the book, which we don't do, we don't drop books, but if you did, and then picked it up and then were looking for where you're up to, you'd be able to find it really quickly, because it all just stands out so much.
Oh, great. I've done a good job of it. That's
You've
really
done a good job of it, yeah. We've got some hellos already. So hi Karen, hi Laura. Laura says interesting premise. It really is. So you've taken something that we're all quite familiar with, but turned it on its head. You've really kind of pushed the boundaries of the reality TV that we've all seen different aspects of it. You don't have to be a massive fan of, you know, Love Island, or it's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. You don't have to be a Big Brother, of course, yeah. You don't have to be a massive fan of them to know what they're about or to have an idea of them. So, but you've obviously worked in the background on some of these shows as well. So you've seen it from a completely different side that I'd have seen it from.
I have actually worked on a reality TV show. I worked on this show called Upstaged, which is going back a little while now. It was produced by Endemol. So Endemol make Big Brother, and Endemol have offices in Bristol, and this particular reality show was based in Bristol. It was 2 glass boxes that were put in the centre of Bristol in Millennium Square. And it was a massive experimental show for Endemol, a little bit similar to The Villa, where the online audience had quite a lot of control. So all these acts would do little videos of themselves, and then the online community would vote to see who they would like to go into these glass boxes, and 2 people would be selected, and they would go head to head for 6 hours straight. And this glass box was tiny, and it was in the center, in the city center, and it was live streamed on this platform. And then the community would vote, and then whoever won would go into the next 6 hours, and then I think it was 4 times 6 in total. And I was a writer for the show, so I was writing. I had these headsets on, essentially, or like, well, I was in a porter cabin on site with the whole team from Who Make Big Brother. They came down, and I was trapped in this little porter cabin with this team, and it was quite fun, to be honest, even though I went slightly mad by the end because it was weeks of this. And I would watch these 2 live streams with headsets, and I would literally go between them, like listening to them, watching them, listening to them. And I would have to write a story every 20 minutes about what was going on inside the glass box. Like, I had to do it, even if nothing had happened, if they had just stood up and sat down again. And so it was a challenge for me to find a story, but it was also a challenge for the people in these boxes, because a lot of them were musicians or actors, hopefuls, wanting to, have their big break on this platform. And often they would only have probably an hour's worth of material. And then it comes to the end of the hour and they've got 5 hours left. And that's where the reality TV comes in. And I think that's what partly inspired the book, because I think one of these contestants said, God, this is like Big Brother. And I thought, yeah, I don't think the penny dropped until that moment, actually, until they actually said. And I thought, Endemol, you're like a genius. It's a really subtle but clever of doing it. And yeah, so I think there was loads of weeks before I actually went on to BBC 3, where Scott Mills presented it. And by the end of the show, I had like one of those twitches in my eye that I couldn't get rid of, because I'd been like, what? I've been doing this like switch between these glass boxes for weeks on end, and I was just like, till really late at night. It was mad. It was actually one of the craziest experiences I've ever had, but I did enjoy it in a sort of adrenaline type way. And I've never been on anything like that since, or it was a once in a lifetime experience.
Would you want to do it again after the whole madness and the twitchy eye?
It took quite a long time to calm down. Would I do it again? I think that show was fairly harmless. It gave me a look inside reality TV, but I don't think anything. There wasn't a long period they were in these, but it's not like in Love Island or Big Brother when they're in an actual zoo-like enclosure for weeks on end. I wouldn't mind. Yeah, possibly. I love the buzz of TV. I have to say that it's a level of energy that I've never experienced anywhere else. It's like everyone is permanently like buzzing and like got all these ideas and wanting to go out, and I don't think I've ever had that anywhere else. So I love that, because I'm quite bouncy and energetic, so I do like that. But if it was, some of these other shows I find a bit questionable, so I definitely wouldn't want to take part in that, I don't think. And if it was The Villa, I certainly wouldn't want to take part.
No, I think you picked up on a good word there, harmless. Obviously in The Villa, not harmless.
Not harmless.
Things are orchestrated very carefully. We're seeing different emotions that people are having, and as you say, the audience are very much involved. So that was one of the things that I noted, that it was really clever that it was done with an internet presence rather than a TV presence. And as you pointed out, that removes some of the rules. If you're going to be on an island somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it's gorgeous, it's paradise. As when Iris is being dropped off, Laura, the journalist, who obviously has a dual role in this, and the pilot says to it's paradise. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. But at the same time, hell on earth.
It does turn into hell, yes, yeah. Without giving too much away, but yeah.
I don't think it gives anything away purely because people will have some expectation. They won't see it coming, but they will have some expectation of what they assume it to be. But you giving the audience that power, removing it from the TV.
Yeah.
So as we're saying that, island in the middle of nowhere, it removes a lot of the rules, and
Yeah.
everything is done with an audience presence of a 24/7. They can see almost everything.
Yeah. I mean, this was one of the big things that I had to work out, because if it was going to be on TV, half the games wouldn't be able to happen, and yet it has been live streamed. So I think perhaps the idea of live stream did come a little bit from my upstaged experience of the live stream, no doubt. But I couldn't make the games too. I couldn't make it like a Hunger Games too extreme, because that would also
No,
be shut down if it was online. So it had to be more than what would be allowed on TV, but not too extreme that it was ridiculous. It was this sort of
yeah.
special point, and that was a real challenge when I was thinking up the games. I spent a long time thinking about what games I could do, how far I could push it, what would be too extreme. I made some of it had to be cut, actually, because it was a little bit too extreme. And then I hope I found the right balance, something that perhaps could happen in the future. I wanted it to be scarily realistic, that
Mm.
if shows like this developed a bit further, could something like this happen? It's
We've got this thing of putting people in kind of a fishbowl environment and watching personalities really just come out really quickly. You wouldn't expect it in a normal social situation, would you? If you're down the pub, you're not going to expect these severe reactions from people. But putting them on an island, you could feel through reading it how different it must have felt for them than normal life. So even though you're not the one experiencing it, you do feel like you're the one experiencing it. You're getting the terror and you're getting the giggles when the different things are happening, and then cringing and going, why would you do that? You're going to look back on this tomorrow and regret it. Why would you? And to fit all of that into a novel that covers 7 days, it's there's so much. I'm in awe of how much you've done in a few hundred pages, how much you've got in, and it doesn't feel like it was overwhelming to read.
Oh, thank you. Again, the timeline was another, as well as the games, was another big thing I thought about a lot, because a lot of these reality TV shows take place maybe over a month. I think they
Mm,
around that time. And so I originally, I think, might have had it over 3 weeks, but because I wanted it to be pacey and to crank up the tension and that to be mimicked in the style of the writing, I knew that if
yeah.
I remove the amount of days, it's going to crank up the intensity. So that's what I settled on the end. I think before I started writing, I did, and then it immediately felt a lot better. Playing with timelines is a really good trick for uh, for the making of plot lines. I mean, you can completely transform a book over a timeline, I think.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other thing is for the contestants going into the villa, 7 days, it doesn't sound like much can go wrong, does it? I'm only there for a week.
Yeah.
3 weeks might be a bit kind of, it's almost as if by choosing 7 days, you've automatically lowered their guard a bit. If they're going in for a month or 3 weeks, it feels like quite a long time. A week, I mean, come on, Ruth, what can really happen in a week?
Depends what they make you do in a week.
So it's really interesting to hear how one thing that you thought, right, it's too long, 3 weeks too long, I'll do a week, but the impact that that had on the plot and the characters and lots of underlying things, it's quite interesting how one decision can change so much.
I completely agree with you. If you have less time to win a prize, you're going to do more extreme things to win it. That was the bottom line, really.
Um, I really liked as well that with books now, there's so many things that you can do. Obviously, you can use people use tweets to show different things, or they might use news articles. You use the live audience, which
Oh, okay,
is a
yeah.
bit different. So, what obviously there's things going on. So you've got people all over the world watching and reacting, and you're showing how people react to the show. So you've got a group of girls having a girls' night in, watching it, and you're
Hmm.
seeing how their dynamic changes as they're watching the villa.
Yeah.
And these different couples watching it. There's so many, and there's like a group of lads watching. There's so many different people watching. I thought it was a really interesting choice.
Oh, thanks. It was inspired a bit through the show Gogglebox.
Mm.
I think that's what I was trying to mimic in a way. And I wanted it to show the viewer sections, just for people watching this, are told through um, every viewer is different, and they're all over the world, and they're watching the show, and they have a different level of if it's a payment system, so they can either be gold tier, bronze tier, and how much they pay towards this tier, they can interact more with the show and have more control over what the contestants do. And so the purpose of this was to show one side of what these reality shows are like, two, how far the reach of the show was getting. So the more popular it's getting, it was taking over the world. And three, it was also to show how these people view the contestants on shows. I think that was probably the most important part of it. That's
Mm.
what I wanted to do when I originally set out to have these Gogglebox sections. That they almost view people who take part in these shows as things, like not real people, and that callousness that I think genuinely does happen, viewing people as objects that they can just like
Mm.
talk about badly. I wanted to get through in the very first viewer section, and I think there's a line in here saying, "Well, why are you so upset? It's not like these people matter." And I think I think that kind of underpins what I was trying to do with the viewer sections, and the wider themes of the book, which is exploring the darker side of reality TV and who might be culpable when things go wrong.
And that's a really good point, because you'd think to a degree everyone who puts themselves in a situation is culpable in some way. However, the coercion that goes on makes people act in ways that they maybe wouldn't usually, becoming extreme versions of themselves. And then the prize money keeps going up and up. And they are more, and as you say, 7 days, you've reduced how much time they've got to really make that impact. So all of the people voting for them, all of the people who want different couples to couple up, there's so many elements to it.
Yeah. Do you know what I was supposed to say now? Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah.
But you've put a lot of pressure on everybody involved. There's no easy job for anyone. They're all as culpable as each other in some ways, but the producers and the people setting it all up, who have really put this island in the middle of nowhere. There's a sheer drop from the side. There's a sheer cliff drop.
Yeah.
There's no escape. It very much feels like they've been kind of put on a prison island, except it's the most luxurious prison in the world.
At first, yeah. I wanted it to be so if something goes wrong in a game show, a reality TV show, I think you a lot of instinctively people blame the show, and that could be completely fair to say that. But through this book, I wanted to explore that maybe it's not just the people that make these shows that are to blame when things go wrong. It's also the people who want to take part, or the people that are voting. I mean, everyone plays a role. It's like a huge
Mm.
machine that's going round. So you have no one's forcing contestants to go into the show. So, if things go wrong, there's that angle. Then you've got the producer who's got a different motive. She just wants to get ratings up. She'll do anything to get ratings up. And then you've got the viewers who are also voting, so they're part of it too. What role do they play in these shows? And I think one of the I wanted to make a book that was entertaining and thrilling and page turning, that kept you up at night. But I also wanted people to stop at the end and think, well, if I watch reality TV, do I play a part in something? I wanted there to be a talking point too. It wasn't just a thriller. That was always my aim. I wanted to
Yeah.
make something stronger than that. I hope that comes across. Like,
It really does. There's this whole thing of people knowing what they were signing up for, which is very rarely the case, I'd imagine. Even if I don't think there's any way of preparing yourself to go into that kind of environment and know exactly what you were doing. You might think you've got an idea of it. I think it's quite different than actually walking in and then trying to figure out how to react when millions of people are watching you live.
yeah, I mean, I think when you're under a microscope, you can never guess how you're going to react. I mean, even when I walk into a room and I have to go and talk about my book, and the spotlight is on me. I know I'm not me. and I suddenly freeze up a bit, or extreme. If you've got a personality that it's naturally lends itself to performing, those sort of circumstances might make you just perform even harder. If you want to be the center of attention, or if you want to win the money, what are you going to do? Yeah, that's definitely what I was trying to make come across in those books. What would people do to win? How far would they go to win? And then you've in the background you've got a producer who knows this, so she's deliberately pressing these pressure points to ramp that up. In fact, I just remember now, when I was first thinking about the book, I was actually my initial idea was to do an experiment on an island, and they were going to be like microdosed with these drugs, and they didn't realize they were taking it in their smoothies and stuff. And um and then only at the end they realized that actually the whole thing wasn't being streamed, but they were actually part of this huge experiment of how to make the best reality TV show. And in the future, these, like, would they be using these drugs and all this kind of thing to get to prompt people to react even more strangely to create TV. But I realized that was an absolutely terrible idea, and then went to
I think it sounds really interesting.
Well, it was definitely, because I think it was all part of this experiment. I like the idea that they didn't realize that it wasn't even they were guinea pigs. Um, but I think, yeah, there's lots of ways that you could play with a TV show like that, and what you could do with it, how far the characters go. I mean, you could take it. It could end up being like a horror film if you wanted to really go far with it, because yeah, it's about choosing the right path that suits you for your writing style, and how you think it's going to hang together.
Now, I know I can ask this because it's on the sheet that came with the book. So you have, I won't ask what, but this isn't your first book. So it's your first thriller under your own name.
Yeah.
It does give the name of a couple of books on the sheet.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to say them or not, but talk to us a little bit about your writing career. I mean, the 20-minute episodes that you had, 20 minutes to write something for the TV show you were doing is really fascinating. And that must have been a lot of a steep learning curve
Very
to be
steep.
doing that. But what about the other books that you've written? How many have you written? Can you
I've written
say?
10 books. Yeah, I've written quite a lot. And I was a newspaper reporter, hard news, working for journalism in the West Country. Then I went to London, and I continued doing news journalism. Then I realized that I preferred writing features, so I kind of migrated into doing features for newspapers and magazines. And then I think I had. Oh, actually, no. I'm just thinking how it came out. I did a lot of work on the Maddie McCann story, and I actually went out there. I reported on it. Back in the day, and um, I made kind of strong connections with the family, and I was in the running to do their book. But this is how it actually all started.
Right, okay.
and then it didn't happen with that publisher, but the publisher said, if you can, they gave me almost like a challenge. They said, if there's this couple that are in hiding, but the story is amazing, if you can find them, you can write this book for us. So it was like a challenge.
Yeah.
I don't think they're good anymore. Back in the day, I was really good at finding people, and I found them, and I persuaded them to do this book with me, and then and that started my ghostwriting career. And then I went from book to book, just writing autobiographies for people, and I did, yeah, lots of them, different types of stories from what is different genres. So I started on what was called misery memoir, which is where quite harrowing real life stories, really tragic stories, and then I moved into some more upbeat animal type stories where healing stories, and then I got into the prison world randomly. I've I've always through my journalism, I can often tell when something's going to be a book quite quickly, and I can be that weird person in a social situation where someone tells me a bit about their life story, and I go ding ding, that's going to be a good book. So I think I was in a social situation, and I met Dr. Amanda Brown, who I wrote the prison doctor for, and I just instantly knew that it was a extraordinary story. So we collaborated, and I wrote the book for her. And then through meeting Dr. Brown, because that often happens when you meet someone, you introduce to someone else, and I met the governor, the wonderful Vanessa Frake, and I did her book. And through that, I went into prisons, maximum security prisons. So a lot of when I do ghostwriting, I make sure that I really live it, so I can describe. Well, there was no way that I was going to be able to describe the inside of a prison without having been in there.
Yeah.
And I had to do it. And I for Dr. Brown, I actually went into Bronzefield, which is the largest women's prison, category B in Europe, and it's a modern prison. And I went in there and I sat in her consultations with the prisoners. The governor allowed it, and he also allowed my digi recorder, which was really great. I got quite high clearance, and it was I don't know how to describe it.
Eye-opening?
It was definitely eye-opening. It was quite, yeah, it was something. I mean, I am quite claustrophobic, but that was like, just, I never want to end up in prison. The amount of so you go through all these double barred gates all the time, unlocking, locking, and I don't know, maybe I went through 14 by the time I went into the area that we were doing the consultations, and I just felt like there was no oxygen left. It was just intense, and and these stories were harrowing. They were really harrowing stories because they weren't cut and dry. She was part of the drug rehabilitation unit, and yes, a lot of these women had committed crimes, but they were also in a really bad way. They were drug dependent. They couldn't break the cycle. There was no support system in place for them, so they would commit these crimes. They would end up back in prison. They would have a short course of methadone to try and weed them off, and then they would go back out and they would go round and round and round. And the stories that they would say that made them end up in the place that they were so extreme and so terrible that it was sad. Actually, it was really sad. And then I met other people. I met people that were in for diamond smuggling. I met all sorts. Like it was. And then with the governor, she was governor of a really old, very famous Victorian prison, the Scrubs. She was of the Scrubs, and I went inside there, and that couldn't be more different experience between a modern, massive like setup to this really old. You've got four floors, I think it was, and you've got the netting strung across them, just like you see in the films. The echoey corridors and the sound of the doors unlocking. It really was just like a film, and I think weirdly, I know you haven't asked me this question, but if I had to choose which one I'd be locked up in, I would have chosen the Scrubs, because it was
Mm.
something about the really modern one that just was, I found more terrifying than the old one. Although I wouldn't want to be in either. But
No, no, and I can't imagine you would end up in either. I think you get it all out on the page. I think we're good. I think we're all safe because you write it all down. I think that's the thing with crime writers, that we always say that if you're the nicest group of people, because it all comes out on the page. Anything that's bothering you, anything that you've just is niggling away, you can explore it through words.
that's a good way of looking at it.
So, I hope so. I hope we're keeping some people in the homes and not in prison because they're getting it out on the page instead, saving some lives through books.
But I think we'd come out with the most like inventive murders, though. You'd probably get away with it.
Yeah, could possibly. Um, I think this is a dangerous path. But my children, I've not got any bodies buried in my garden, just to be clear. But
Yeah,
my
neither do I.
children,
To be clear.
yeah,
To be clear.
my children do joke a lot about how lovely my roses are.
Oh.
It's like a running joke because they just kept going and going last year. Just for ages and ages. And my daughter kept going, yeah, okay, nobody's annoyed you lately, all right. There's
Oh.
nobody under the roses, please. There's really not. Very nice roses. Somebody's asked, have you read The Last Passenger, which I believe is Will Dean?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
No,
I had
I
this thing.
haven't. They haven't asked why, so I'm wondering what the connection there is. So give us a clue. I'm not sure who asked. I can only see it's Facebook user, sadly, but I should ask, because we're on the subject of writing, what you are working on next. Are you
Um,
already in the middle of something? Are you having a bit of a break? Where are you up
no
to?
break, no break whatsoever. In fact, I'm panicking to a deadline. I'm working on a sort of another destination thriller, if you call it that.
Okay.
And this one's set in it's in the Swiss mountains. And I recently did a little research trip there. As I was saying that, I need to go places to make it come alive. I mean,
Yeah.
I can imagine it, but I can't. Like I couldn't imagine the prison. And the location for what I'm going to be writing about was high up on a mountain, and I've never experienced that. And
Mm.
so I went to this revolving restaurant called Piz Gloria. I hope I said that right. It's where they filmed James Bond on Her Majesty's Secret Service,
Right, okay.
and it's 3,000 meters above sea level, and it's just this revolving restaurant on the top of a mountain. And I think I was being I'm a little bit afraid of heights, and I think I was being maybe a little bit naive, or maybe just not really wanting to look into it too closely. Although I was hell bent on getting up this mountain, because this is exactly
Mm.
where I want to set the thing for this book. And I thought it would just be one cable car ride up, but it wasn't. It wasn't at all. It was about 4 cable cars up, just going up and up and up this mountain, and the drop was getting huge, more and more like the valley was disappearing. It was terrifying, and I just felt like I felt like the cable car could snap at any moment. It was
It's
really
making me anxious just hearing about it and picturing it.
scary. And then there was this last bit, so there was this kind of this pit stop right before the end. And I thought we'd come to the end. I was shaking at this point. I was actually physically trembling. And I got
Mm.
up, I've done it, I've done it. This is it, I've done it. And then there was this last bit to go, which seemed like an even more like little cable car. But I didn't see the cable car at first. I just saw the ski lifts, because people were skiing at the top. It was mad. And
Yeah.
it was just these little ski lifts that are going up, and I thought, I'm not going on that with my legs dangling, not a chance. And I backed out, and I literally just went like, no, no, no more. And then I saw it was a cable car, and I did the last bit. And there's this last bit where you go up to the restaurant, and you're kind of going along in the cable car, and then it just lurches up to this time. Honestly, it's just like I was petrified. But when I got there, I thought the view. I mean, the view was insane. It was really
Mm.
saw you just saw, it felt like the entire Swiss mountains, and it was stunning. It was just really, and it was actually quite difficult to breathe. I went up the staircase, and I kind of actually felt really out of breath when I got to the top. It was a really strange sensation. But long story short, I realized that I could set what I want to do on this mountaintop. It was going to work, and it probably would work quite well. So I'm absolutely stoked that I did it, and it was worth it. And um I hope it works well when I actually write it. My deadline.
So, how long were you up there? Were you kind of taking photographs, making notes, just
Yeah,
soaking it all in?
I was taking videos because I like that. That brings back
Okay.
that atmosphere a bit more. I was up there for maybe an hour in the restaurant, and I sat in the actual restaurant, had a little glass of champagne. It goes round. It takes an hour to rotate round, so you see the whole mountainscape. So if anyone
Oh.
is interested in going, it's absolutely 100% worth it. And then I went down to that little bit that I talked about earlier. That's just one cable car away, and they have this scary walk where they have a glass bottom.
I
Um,
had a feeling you were going to say something with glass then.
yeah,
Did you see me tremble as you said it?
yeah, it's called
No.
Thrill something. I don't know what it is, but it wraps around the side of this cliff top, and there's this huge drop down, not even to the valley because you're too far up for that, but there's just huge drop, and the wind is whistling right round you. I don't know why I did it. I just I feel like I don't know, I've got this weird thing, like I'm really scared of something but I still have to do it. So I did it because I was up there and I thought, well, I can't not do it. And then that was really terrifying, but it was really worth it. And then you go, this was really amazing. So you go down to the next level, which is this beautiful Swiss village on a mountaintop, 1,500 meters up, which called Murren, and it
Mm.
doesn't have any cars, obviously, and it's just this all these pretty Swiss houses on the side of this mountaintop, and they live up there. I don't know how they get their groceries and all that stuff. Maybe up through the cable car, but they live in this peaceful environment. There's a few hotels. I think all the crew from James Bond stayed in these hotels there,
Mm.
and you can walk around, and that's where that you get a lot of the extreme sporters. You get people just base jumping off the side of the cliff into the valley. There's a lot of that, and um and it's really really nice. It's really kind of, it's, you could just go up to that if you didn't want to go all the way to the top.
Mm.
But yeah, that was halfway down, and then you take the cable car back down into the valley, and it's this beautiful valley with 20 waterfalls, and you can hear the waterfalls, the sound of it gushing. It was really phenomenal. And even though I'd watched lots of YouTube videos before I went, not of the trip to Pisglory, but of the area, the valley, and I wanted
Mm.
to choose the right place, I couldn't have made it up. I couldn't have made what I saw up, because it was just so beautiful, and the sounds,
Mm.
like this, I wouldn't have known that waterfall was making that noise, and the light, the pink light coming through at the end of the day. It was really pretty. So I'm all for traveling if you can afford it, to where you got to write about.
It sounds just insanely beautiful being there. I don't know how well I do with the cable cars. I'm not sure. But I do think I've got a bit of that element that you were saying of I don't know, maybe a bit of stubbornness. If something's scaring me, I'm going to go and do that. But I don't know, the older I get, the more I think, nah,
Yeah.
I don't know. A bit of a wuss now. I'm a little, not old, but older. I just think, no, probably not. It depends what it is. I don't know about the cable cars. I don't know about that glass thing. There's a hotel in Manchester, the Hilton Hotel, and they've got like a glass panel that I think it's the 23rd floor. They've got a bar,
Okay,
and
right.
there's a bit that just juts out over the
Yeah,
street, and
yeah,
then you can stand on the glass and look through.
yeah.
And I was terrified, but I did that because I was trying to be a show off, I think. Like, oh, I'll do it. Nobody else wants to do it, fine, I'll do it. And since then I've been thinking, why? Why would I do even that? That's just No, I don't think I could do the glass bottom one in the middle of the Alps somewhere. I think that's insanely brave.
I did skydiving once. That was pretty mad. I shouldn't
Oh
have done
wow.
that really was. I think what I do is I try not to think about it before I do it. So I think that's why I didn't prep the actual. I watched loads of videos on the area, but I didn't watch the Piz Gloria thing because I think I knew I was going to be a bit afraid. And then yeah, so I it was one day I did a bit of time out in New Zealand a long time ago, and just spontaneously on that morning I was with friends. I decided to do this skydive, and yeah. It was actually really, really fun. It was really fun, but I had a cold. So just FYI, if you have a cold, don't go skydiving because I don't think I could smell for a week. It just blew my sinus.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
it's like ice cold. When you go out, the air is so cold and it's rushing at you at such a speed that you actually can't breathe. You can't get you come out the plane and you're tumbling through the air, and I actually quite like that, the somersaulting. But that bit, and then you free fall for a while before you pull the chute, and that free falling is like you can't, I don't think you breathe. It's just like because it's coming at you. But it was really fun. This is probably totally nothing to do with the villa, but yeah.
I don't think that matters. I think it all adds to the experience, and it's making me wonder. You've written the villa. The next one's going to be in the Alps. Are you going to do something equally mad for the third one?
Um,
Have you got
so
that far in your thoughts yet? Trips planned to scary places to jump off things and climb up things.
I haven't thought about it yet, but yeah, probably somewhere. I'd like to keep writing books that take me places. I love traveling, so I'm a big traveler. I've traveled my entire life. I grew up traveling because of my parents, what they were doing. So I think it's in my blood, and I think that's why it's coming across maybe a bit in the books. I lived in lots of tropical countries when I was a child because of my dad's job. He worked in international development, so I grew up in Papua New Guinea and Indonesia and all sorts of places. And then I think that traveling bug has sort of stayed with me, and I would say that when I'm writing books, describing the locations is what I like doing the best, more than the dialogue. I find the dialogue and the conversations just terrify me, to be honest.
Really? Because they flow so well.
Really, because like I would say that was my weakest link, but other people didn't say so. But when it comes to it, yeah, writing what people say to each other, I find a huge challenge. Describing where you are and the feelings that you have when in that place, I love, and I feel like that's easy.
So how do you work on the dialogue if it's the bit that you find the most difficult? Do you read it out loud? Do you do you kind of have somebody read lines with you and go through things, or how do you go about it?
I do read it out loud. I think that's a really, really good trick. I did a lot of reading about how to write dialogue. I did a lot of research about it, and that way that you don't conversations aren't like to and fro. They're often broken, and you almost like a missed out line when you have this conversation. And I tried all these techniques, and they really helped. Or you can cut out a lot of things that you wouldn't. You sort of write it and then you cut out quite a bit of it because it actually runs better if you cut it out. But I think the best device to help you write dialogue I found was reading it out loud. Yeah. And I think sometimes not just the dialogue, but if you're stuck on a part of the book. Oh, I know what a good device. I send it to myself on my mobile phone, and I find that if I read the document on my phone, I can see lots of mistakes that I can't see if I'm looking at my Word document on my computer. And in fact, that has a huge impact on my editing. That reading it in a different way.
A few years ago, Kath Middleton, who's an author, she's one of our admins, absolutely marvelous woman. She told me that I could send things to Kindle, and just reading it on your Kindle is the strangest thing because you do pick up so much.
Yeah.
things that you just don't see. I don't know why it does. I don't know why our brains do these things to us, but there are so many little tricks, aren't there, to just help you see it in a different light.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, definitely, yeah.
It's very, very strange. We have got 10 minutes left, so we've we've flown through this hour already. What have you been reading recently? Can you read? This is something I like to ask people. Can you read crime while you're writing something with a crime aspect? Do you read at all when you're writing, or do you find it off-putting?
I can I do I read? Yeah, I can read, but I've got sort of a bit of a jittery brain when I'm writing, when I'm in the middle of it.
Mm,
So I read for a bit and then I can't concentrate for very long. I like I like to sometimes read a similar genre to get into the writing of the day. So if I'm having struggling starting for the day, sometimes I'll pick up a book that I really like or a style that I like and I'll read it as almost inspo to get me going.
yeah,
But to actually sit and read a book, probably not when I'm in the thick of writing. I think reading helps me when I'm in the editing process because it helps me sharpen up my copy. I don't know why. And as for what I'm reading, I'm reading close to the end of a destination thriller by Lucy Clark called The Hike,
okay.
and I've been reading that, and I think it's great. I've read her other books, and it's about a group of friends in Norway, I think. So it's describing the Norwegian landscape, which I found really interesting because for the book that I setting in the Swiss mountains, Norway was my number one option, and I couldn't get out there actually, so I decided
Mm.
to go with them. But I was toing and froing between that location, so it's really lovely to read how she's presented it in the book, and um, yeah, so it's really interesting.
I want to touch on something that you said a minute ago when you said picking up a book just to kind of get the flow going. Lots of people, and I think quite wrongly, think that if you pick up somebody else's book, you're going to copy them, you're going to emulate everything. But actually, when you start writing, your voice creeps back in. So
Yeah.
it might start off in a certain way, but that's probably the bit that you're going to disregard because that's not you talking. And you're going to move into the bit that is your distinctive voice. You must have more than one distinctive voice as well, which I always find just incredible when people can write in one voice and they might have two series, for example, and you can tell that both are written by one author, even though they're quite different. But having more than one writing voice is quite a challenge, I'd have thought. But you must have mastered that.
Oh, thank you, because that was something that I thought I hadn't mastered, but perhaps years of writing for other people.
Yeah, so being able to take their voice and learn about Dr. Brown, for example, and learn about the governor, learn different people's stories, finding the couple that you found, hearing their story, and writing through their eyes and through their voice.
Yeah.
And then you're writing your book, The Villa, and it's your voice, it's your style. It's just mind blowing to me that there's so many voices in one head.
There is a lot of voices. When you do a ghost book and you do the interviews,
Mm,
you start the interviews by telling people how to almost answer the questions because you want them to answer the questions in a way that's going to make it easy for you to write the book. So you say, "Can you please speak in anecdotes?" So when you're remembering something from the past, can
mm,
you tell me what you felt? Like, can you remember the music in the room? Can you remember if it was day or night? Can you remember what you were wearing? And by the end of this journey that you've been on with the interviews, they're often perfect at describing the situation like that. So then you've got
mm,
it all down on the tape. And your job as a ghostwriter is to craft a story from it that's going to be interesting, a page turner. So it's not just taking their words and writing the book. It's far from it. You have to make
yeah.
a story out of it, and you have to join the dots between. They probably give you maybe half. maybe a bit more information, but the rest is you. You've got to describe everything. You've got to fill in the blanks. You've got to be their voice to join. You know, some sentences they won't say. They'll sign it off, but they went, "Oh yeah, I would have said exactly that." So then you become. I guess you've got to become quite good at becoming somebody, and so you've got their voice in your head. And this book takes maybe start to finish 6 months, but you're writing it potentially quite quickly in 2 months, and all you hear is their voice in your head. It's intense because you've listened to these tape recordings over and over again when you're like writing it down, and so I can hear them. I can fill in the blanks. I know I could finish the governor's sentences for her probably. I just know what she's going to say and how she's going to say it, and perhaps that helped maybe when I was doing different voices in the villa, because I also think by taking them out and doing them individually on a document. So I put the journalist in one document and the producer in another document, and keeping that consistently, I kept inside their head. But I would hear their voice. I would definitely hear it. It wouldn't be my voice. It would be accented. It would be said in a certain way. I had to become. I feel like you have to become them to make it convincing. Otherwise, they'll all. Otherwise, you just risk them all sounding the same, and that is something that terrifies me when doing multiple voices. Like, you don't make them distinct if you have too many voices.
Yeah, I think if you weren't so good at this, if they weren't so distinctive, I don't see how this could have worked. It works because of the effort that's gone into keeping the characters in, and it's so much more than that. I realise we're going to run out of time, but so you've got distinctive characters, you have got how they interact with each other, and it starts off with 8 of them in the villa, and then obviously other things change and things happen, but even how each one interacts. So there might be Laura and Angela off having a conversation, and there's, kind of almost they're looking out for each other. And then you've got Becky, who's a bit wild, who is, she's up for it. She's an Annie.
Right.
Annie is. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't imagine how you could be friends with Annie. I think you'd take her in small doses.
yeah, they're definitely up for it. Sure.
Yeah. So, but then you've got how all of the women interact together, how they all interact individually. You see them in moments on their own. You've got all of that going on. Plus, then you're throwing in 4 guys, interactions with them, different surprises coming in from all over the place, which we won't name any of it. It's all, part of the games and part of other things and part of this big plan. And how you've managed to do that is astonishing.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know how you've done it.
Really?
There's just so much going on, and each person is a person within their own right, a person within a group, a person within a couple, whether that's 2 friends or whether it's an actual couple, or dealing with the therapist, the on-site therapist, Dr. Alexander. You've got them the way that we all act, the way that we are all one person, one version of ourselves in each situation that we're in.
Oh,
I mean, it's mind-boggling.
the most that was I was worried about. So thank you.
It's mind-boggling. I genuinely. How have you done it? How did you keep track? I mean, obviously you've got the separate documents for each one, so you in their voice. But when you're then putting them into different situations all the time,
I maybe it is something to do with my ghostwriting, where when you ghostwriting, you literally have to become that person, and their voice plays in your head. Perhaps I don't. I mean, perhaps I didn't realize I was doing it, but I could definitely hear the producer Michelle's voice in my head. That was a very strong voice, and I could hear the way she spoke. It wasn't the way I spoke. It was always there. It was vivid. Laura, I think, took more crafting. I went over it, but I saw them really vividly, all these characters in my head, and then I just imagined if they were maybe I was writing a book for them, what traits they would have, what they would speak like. Yeah. I don't really know. Maybe.
Excuse me.
I've been doing it for a long time, ghostwriting. like so many years that maybe
Mm.
that did help.
Maybe it's become instinctive.
Maybe.
Yeah, which is a blooming good trait to have, isn't
Oh,
it, for a writer?
I hope so. Because I've actually shied away from doing maybe 4 or 5 voices of individual chapters. So maybe it is something that I could try and
Mm.
give a go.
I think there's no harm in trying whatever you fancy trying. It'll either really work or it'll need some
Yeah.
work. I don't think it'll ever fall completely flat. I don't feel like there's something that you couldn't do with the skills you've got and the voices that you've managed to rein in as though they're all these separate people.
Oh, thank you.
It is 8 o'clock. I can't believe how quickly the hour's gone. Would you like to give us a recap of The Villa and show off the book cover?
Okay, here's the book cover. It comes out. Is it? I just realised. Is it? I
Is
think
it
it's
tomorrow? I meant to ask you this
yeah.
before we went live, but we got talking, so I forgot.
It comes out tomorrow.
22nd of June.
The 22nd of June.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It will be pretty much everywhere, I've been told, from Sainsbury's, Asda, Tesco, the airports, WH Smith. Yeah, so hopefully you'll find a copy and might want to buy it after listening to me rambling on. And it's the longest day of the year today, isn't it? So it's on the eve
Is
of,
that today?
yeah, I think it is. It's summer solstice. Yeah, so this is a good day. It's a good day for this to come out tomorrow.
It absolutely is. And you can all go and read it and just be glad that you are not the one actually in the villa. Enjoy the luxury without putting yourself in literally in the middle of the drama. It's a brilliant book. We didn't even talk about the fact that there is a body. And now we're going to leave that hanging. That's all we're going to say. There's a body. Yeah. And that's where we're going to end. Thank you to everyone who's watched. Thank you so much, Ruth, for coming and talking to me about the villa.
Having me.
And hopefully I'll see you at one of the events that are coming up soon.
I would love that, yeah.